then to finish off the sort of harder parts, we got a new guy in called Warren Cucurilla.
When I first met Nick in New York, when I came to do the sessions on Notorious, we talked for hours that night, and he said, look, it's important that we have a guitarist in the band, and, your stuff sounds really great, and, this could turn into something where we start writing songs together, and, so it was kind of presented to me like, there's definitely a place for you in the band.
No point did it grind to a halt at all. Even if it was only a little bit that was going on, it was still moving. It was always moving. It never actually stopped, which is an important thing.
Yeah, I think when we got to making the Big Thing album, the three of us realised that we had to write it on our own, and we knew the ground we had to cover. When we were making Notorious, we were all a little bit unsure. We hadn't worked with each other for a couple of years, and we were very polite to each other, actually. We started screaming with this album again and just, getting the best out of each other, really. Neither of the singles off that record really, did anything commercially, so it was, we felt we were slipping down a muddy bank. And, we felt we were growing and we were playing better, but it didn't matter because the media wasn't interested in what we were doing. And we just felt that it was going to take a couple of albums because we were dealing in people's perceptions. It wasn't so much the music that we were making, it was we had to change people's perceptions. People were thinking of us as a band that belonged in the 80s, that belonged with a certain type of audience. So we just thought we just had to go back to the drawing board. I think the impact that working in a home studio at Warren's house had on this album was extraordinary because we'd never worked like that before, and it just made the whole thing, it brought it down to earth, it brought it down to a level whereby, it was just us and some instruments and a small amount of recording equipment. Warren's life really does circle around music all the time, and he was so happy that we could record it in his living room.
When we got it back from the graphic artist and we had no title, he just had the name Duran Duran right in the middle, and it looked like a finished piece of artwork, so we just thought, why bother coming up with the title? None of the songs' titles really suited, really summed up the whole, all the parts of what we thought the album meant, so calling it just Duran Duran. Now it's nicknamed The Wedding Album because of the photos.
Yeah, I was just visiting my parents one day and I saw this old photo on the mantelpiece, and I thought, who's that? I looked at it closer and I realized it was my parents' wedding day. And, old photos just sometimes take on an aura. This had that thing about it. I thought, well, actually, it's a great image. I wonder what all the other guys' parents' wedding photos look like. And there's something quite strange about the thought of all of them being on the cover, sort of being the total sum of what genetically made the record.
But I won't cry for yesterday.
I think there was a time when we were so desperately saying, hey, don't call it a comeback, to quote LL Cool J. But the fact is, as far as the people who are concerned, who are into music and listen to the radio, watch the TV and everything, Duran Duran really did fall down the back of the sofa, And I think that it's what those people think that counts, and they do think it's a comeback, so it's a comeback.
It'll take a little time, might take a little cry to come undone. Now
I was just trying to figure out, some kind of melodic thing, and sometimes I just have like these nonsense words, but I just said, when you come undone, and I thought, wow.
Destroy my empathy, I hate to bite the hand that feeds me so much information.
There's one question that comes up in the interview more than any other question I can think of, and that is, why did you make a covers album? Nick and I, way back in 1985, I think it was, were talking about doing a project together. It turned into Arcadia, and it had Arcadia songs, but originally it was a concept cover album. We made lists of songs to do, and in actual fact, some of the songs that were on that list have ended up on the album Thank You.
When we released the Wedding album, it took off beyond our expectations, and so we went on a world tour that lasted for almost a year and a half. During that time, we went into the studio whenever we could for a day here and a day there. When we were in New York City, we recorded with Grandmaster Flash and Melly Mel and the Furious Five.
I think it's a great burden, has potential to be a really big record, because like the original record, when we first cut White Lines, it was big in certain areas. Now, it wasn't big all across the country. The White Lines version that they did now has the potential to be in a big record, you know, all over the world.
To be quite honest, at first when they said they were going to record it, I was expecting just to hear a typical rock sort of track, a rock track version, but when they asked us to come down to listen to the track before they made anything else, just I opened the studio door, the track blew my head off.
Put 'em up, put 'em up, put 'em up! Higher, baby. Get higher, baby. Get higher, baby. And go knock us down.
It's quite an interesting process of making this album, was choosing the different songs that would go on it. And I wouldn't say that it's an album of anybody's favourite songs. It certainly doesn't represent my favourite songs of the 60s, 70s, 80s. And they're on the album not because they're our favourites, but because they are landmark pieces of music in the history of music.
Just a perfect day. You made me forget myself. I thought I was someone else, someone new.
I think Duran's version of Perfect Day is possibly the best re-recording of a song of mine that I've heard. He's absolutely wild about it.
I've always loved Lou Reed, and I think, you know, he's never crossed over on a commercial level, maybe as much as he should have done. Perfect Day is it's a classic song, and I thought Simon could really nail it as well, and he did.
Such a perfect day. I'm glad I spent it with you.
Giving the album a title, that was quite a difficult decision to make, actually, until we looked at the names of the songs that we'd recorded, and there was one title which was obviously the right one, and that was Thank You. It's kind of, the way I look at it, it's kind of thank you to all the artists who we've covered, thank you for the great music, and also we've had great things said about the songs from the original artists. And modesty prevents me from quoting them directly on camera. Public Enemy, well, Flavor Flav said,
Duran did 911 as a joke over, and I just got finished hearing it for my first time. Slam.
Well, the Duran, Thank You was exceptional, really.
Duran, eh? Is this thing on? They recorded my song. Success. Hey, is this thing on? Sure glad I can publish.
I think the Duran thing is really good because it's kind of the way that he sings it. Simon is it's a totally different way of singing it, and it works great. It's real good.
One of the things I like about Duran is, I think when they first came out, they were sort of like pretty boys. And they went and they made the mistake of having a hit right off the bat. That's kind of the kiss of death, because you're dismissed 6 months later. But they've hung together, and they're a real band, and nobody can take that away from them. One of the things I liked about their version of Perfect Day was the fact that it was such an accurate take on it. They recorded it the way I meant it, which is a real big thrill to me. So thank you, Duran.
such a perfect day. I'm glad I spent it with you. Such a perfect day. You just keep me hanging on. You just keep me hanging on.
And that brings us to the end of this Duran Duran broadcast. Thank you.